This is a lecture from Open Tuition. To benefit from the lecture, you should download the free lecture notes from opentuition.com.
So let's go through and look at the functional currency. So this is looking from the introduction, whereby we had a UK company that was buying or selling goods on credit to an overseas supplier. I think in the introduction we looked at it being a German company, wasn't it? So what we're looking at here is, first of all, we're going to look at why the UK company prepared its accounts in pound sterling and why the German company has chosen to prepare its accounts in euros. Okay. And that currency that they prepare their accounts in is referred to as the functional currency. And we have specific rules about what the functional currency is, with then guidelines on how to go through and determine it. So what we've got there, first of all, is it gives us the definition of what the functional currency is. And it's the currency of the primary economic environment where we operate. So it's the currency where you P. Okay, so primary economic environment, P double E. Now what does that mean? Well, essentially it means where you trade. Okay, where do you generate most of your sales? So what currency are most of your sales denominated in? And what currency are most of your expenses incurred in? So the standard then goes on to develop it further and says there in which it is the currency whereby we primarily generate and expend your cash. Okay, so for a UK company or a German company, it'd be nice and straightforward, wouldn't it? Because your UK company probably makes most of its sales within the UK. It probably pays most of its staff their wages and salaries in pound sterling. They probably make most of their purchases locally, so that's also in pound sterling. So a UK company has its functional currency of the pound sterling, and likewise, a German company, for similar reasons, would have the functional currency as the euro. But where it could differ, it is maybe in developing countries. Their currency that they have as their domestic currency might not be that valued as a currency globally. So maybe most of their sales are sold and they're sold in dollars. Okay. And maybe a lot of the materials that they buy, their purchases are also in dollars. So you could have a developing nation and a company in that developing nation that has its functional currency as the dollar. Okay, so just be aware. You may need to go through there, mightn't you, and explain why a country has a particular functional currency. But remember, it's there, isn't it? Looking at the currency of the primary economic environment, so where we P. It also then looks at where we generate our cash and where we expend cash. And then it further goes through and helps us, doesn't it, by saying, look, you need to look there at what the sales prices are denominated in. Also, as well, what your operating costs are. So when you're thinking there about your operating costs, you're thinking about your labor and materials, and also there as well what the entity's finances are. Okay, so if you have a dollar loan, then essentially the reason why you have that dollar loan is to pay off your operating costs, isn't it? So therefore, your functional currency might be there to be determined as the dollar. Okay, so that's a little bit of background about the functional currency and how you go through there and determine it. There's plenty of bits and pieces to get yourself stuck into there. 5 things essentially to remember, aren't there? Primary economic environment, where we generate and expend cash, sales prices, operating costs, entities' finances. Okay, so the 5 things that you need to consider. Once we've gone through and done that, we then need to go through, don't we, and look at how we then translate an invoice, whether that's a purchase or a sales invoice, that is in a different currency to our entity's functional currency. So going back and looking at the example that we had within the introduction, we had a UK company that bought goods from Germany, and the invoice was denominated, wasn't it, in euros. The UK company had a functional currency of the pound sterling, so we need to get the euros and translate them into pound sterling before we can record the debits and the credits. And what we have here again are further rules. So what you've got there, when we're looking at the individual company, what goes through and happens there is that when you enter into a transaction, you record it at the rate that was in place on the date the transaction took place. So that there essentially is referred to as the historic rate, or HR for short, which makes sense, doesn't it? If I was to enter into a transaction today in an overseas currency, you would translate it at whatever rate is in place today. Logic, okay? So that's nice and straightforward. Do the translation at today's rate, or the historic rate as it's referred to, and then process the debit and the credits. What you then have to go through and do, just be careful, is you then need to look at what happens at year end. And at year end, you go through your statement of financial position, looking at all the assets and looking at all the liabilities. And what we have to do is we have to categorize all the assets and all the liabilities into either monetary or non-monetary items. Okay. And we'll become familiar with what is monetary and what is non-monetary. But essentially, monetary are things that can be readily converted into cash. So we're thinking there, do we have any overseas receivables balances? Do we have any overseas cash balances? Do we have any overseas payable balances? Or do we have any overseas loan balances? Because they are readily convertible into cash, aren't they? You know, your supplier may demand payment immediately, so therefore you need to make that cash payment, don't we? So there's 4 things that you need to keep an eye out: receivables, payables, cash, obviously, and an overseas loan. Okay. Non-monetary is anything else. Again, in this exam, non-monetary tends to be there. Is it your inventory, investments, property, plant and equipment, intangible assets? They are all non-monetary because they are not readily convertible into cash. We use them within the business to help us try and generate, don't we, some profit or cash within the future. And the reason why we make the distinction is because when you go through there and look at the monetary items are retranslated, because if they are readily convertible into cash, we need to get them to their most up-to-date value, don't we? So therefore the monetary items are retranslated, and when they're retranslated, they're translated at the closing rate. However, just be aware, any non-monetary items are not retranslated. Okay, you just leave them there at whatever value they were translated at originally at the historic rate. So to summarize, what you have is that you go through there and you translate all items initially, don't we, at the historic rate. At the year end, monetary we retranslate, non-monetary we leave. Okay, so just to summarize again: monetary, translate, retranslate; non-monetary, translate, leave, don't touch it. Okay, the only other bit that we can go through and add is what happens when we retranslate things in terms of our monetary items at the end of the year. Well, gains and losses that you have are taken directly there to profit or loss. The standard doesn't specifically say where exactly they should go, but it's therefore entirely up to you. Just for now, just be happy that they are taken to profit or loss, whether that is a gain on retranslation or a loss on retranslation. And then finally, just at the bottom, just so you have it, it just goes through there and summarizes what the non-current asset investments, tangibles, inventory, they are all non-monetary. Everything else is monetary, which we gave you examples as receivables, payables, cash, and a loan, which are all in an overseas currency. Okay, there you go. That's the knowledge. Next video, we'll go through there and have a play around with the example. So let's go through and have a look at the example that's entitled functional currency, which goes through there and reworks or works our way through the rules that we saw in the previous video, whereby you have there your monetary item, you translate and retranslate. Non-monetary items you translate and leave, don't we? And any gains or losses on the retranslation get taken through profit or loss. That's it, nothing else to it. So let's go through there and have a look at the example in detail. So it says, show how the transaction will be recorded in Flowers' financial statements. So it specifically says there that you have the functional currency as the US dollar. So everything needs to be translated into US dollar in the financial statement. So in the statement of financial position and the statement of profit or loss. It says it trades with several suppliers overseas, and it says there that we bought goods costing 400,000 dinar on the 1st of December 20x5. So we will need to translate those dinar into US dollars at the rate that's in place on the 1st of December 20x5. Okay, and you've got that rate there, the historic rate. So the rate in place and the transaction date. So we'll translate it at 4.1 dinar to the US dollar. It's a purchase. It is a purchase on credit, presumably. So therefore, you will debit your purchases and credit your payables with whatever amounts we get when we do the translation. So we have the purchase, we have a payable. We then need to look at what happens at year end, don't we? Because it says that we then paid for the goods on the 10th of January 20x6. If we have a year end of the 31st of December, so the year end 31st of December 20x5, well, at the end of the year, we need to look at the monetary and the non-monetary items. So the monetary item will be the payable. The non-monetary item is that purchase, isn't it, which effectively is the inventory. And the inventory, the non-monetary item, we do not translate or do not retranslate. And the payable, the monetary item, we will translate, won't we? So what you have there is that the monetary item will need to be translated at that closing rate, won't it? Then what you've got, we make the payment on the 10th of January, so shortly after the reporting date. So again, we have a payable. We need to record the payment at the rate that was in place on that date, don't we? And the rate that was in place on the 10th of January was there as the 4.4 dinars. So let's go through, play around with the various bits and pieces and make sure that you are happy with it. So on the 1st of December, is it the X5? You need to go through there, don't we? And record the entry. So I debit my purchases and credit my payables, don't I? Key bit that you've got there is that you take the 400,000 dinars and divide it by the rate that was in place on the 1st of December 20x5. I think that gives me, and again, just check on your calculator, is it 97561? So that's nice and straightforward, isn't it? Nothing too challenging there. You just take the dinars and divide it there by the dinar rate, don't we, of the 4.1. You then get to the year end, which is there the 31st of the 12th, x5. And on the 31st of the 12th, x5, you need to translate the monetary item, don't we? So that's there as the payable. So the overseas payable value is 400,000. The exchange rate at that date was 4.3. So your payable should be, is it at 93023? Okay. Whereby our payable previously was at 97561, isn't it? So what you've got there is you have, is it a reduction in your payable? So we take the 97561, deduct the 93023. Is that a decrease of 4538? Okay. So that's a decrease in your payable. To decrease your payable, you will debit your payable the 4538, and then you credit your statement of profit or loss with 4538. Credits are good within the statement of profit or loss, aren't they? We like credits in profit or loss, so that is an FX gain. Okay, and the reason again, if you like, is a reduction in payable is a good thing, isn't it? And then the good thing that you have that is therefore in profit or loss. So you debit your payable because you are reducing the payable, aren't we? And then we credit your statement of profit or loss with an FX gain. Okay, just be aware that's the payable. The non-monetary item, the inventory that you have is that you would leave it, wouldn't we? So you've got 97561. That would therefore be left at 97561 at the year end because it is a non-monetary item, isn't it? Okay, there we go. So that's the 31st of December. We now have a payable, don't we, at 93023. We then just need to go through, don't we, and look at what happens. I think, was it on the 10th of January? Okay, that's when you make the payment. The payment is the 400,000. The rate that was in place on that payment date was 4.4. So I pay, is it $90909? That's the payment that you would make, isn't it? So if that's the case, you credit the bank with the 90909. You remove the payable in full. So what was the payable? Well, the payable, we retranslated at the year end as 93023. So I credit my payable 93023. So I debit my payable. And then the balancing figure, I think, to credit, isn't it? Because we have an excess of debit over credits. We debit my statement of profit or loss. It's to do with foreign exchange. That is a gain. And that difference is at 2114. Okay. There we go. Okay. Processing the debits and credits, as well as being able to process the debits and credits, you need to think as well about what is shown within the financial statements. So most importantly, I suppose that's at the end of the year, isn't it? Whereby you have a payable in your current liabilities at 93023 and an FX gain of 4538. Okay. Work through the example again, make sure that you're happy with it, and if you get stuck, you know where we are. Keep up the hard work.